Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome again here on this Christmas Eve. My name is Pastor Ian Boley on behalf of Pastor Bob, on behalf of our whole church, our whole worship team here. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Can we thank our praise team once more for all of the music that they are providing for us this evening? So tonight's message, as you may have been able to figure out from the title here, it's a story. It's a kind of bedtime story. It's a Christmas bedtime story. So how many kids do we have here tonight? Do we have some young kids in the back? So you may be surprised to learn this, but there are some open seats in the front row. If there are any young kids that would like to come forward to the front to hear this bedtime story, you're welcome to do that, or maybe you want a grown-up to come up with you. If there's any big kids here tonight who want to scurry up to the front row and hear the bedtime story, you're welcome to do that too. Just get in touch with, here comes Amy, all right? Everyone here, I invite you to, all right, and Eliza and Rianne, all right. I invite you to just get in touch with your inner child for a moment, with that part of you that maybe used to be nervous that Santa Claus would arrive at your house before you got home from the Christmas Eve service, right? That was always a fear that I had when I was little. If you remember that, if there's any kids here worried about that, kids, fear not. Santa Claus is just like Gandalf the Wizard. He's never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to, all right? Santa will be there. So, like we said, it's a bedtime story tonight. It's a kind of a not-so-subtle allegory for the candles that we've lit. Don't worry about interpreting it in the right or wrong way. There's not really a right or wrong way. It's just a story, so I hope you all get something out of it tonight. Many years ago, in a forest so wide you could barely dream of its end, there lived a family of sparrows. There were 5 in all. One mother who cared for everyone in her nest with devotion and love, and 4 little sparrow chicks. These chicks laughed and played and ate and drank and learned to fly, all together. But they were not all the same. As they grew, and as they learned more about themselves, their mother also learned about them. And so, she gave them all names. Now, the first sparrow, she called Speranza. Now, Speranza was the youngest and the smallest of all of her sparrow chicks. But she was also the most patient, the most imaginative. She had a way of seeing beyond the difficult times and foretelling the brighter days that lay ahead. Once, during a horrible rainstorm, when all the other sparrows were huddled together in their nest, cold and hungry and afraid of the night, Speranza turned to them all, unprompted, out of nowhere, and she said, "Tomorrow will be better." Now, the second sparrow, the mother called Pace. Pace was one of the strongest of all the sparrows. He was the hardest working and the most diligent sparrow chick. And whenever it seemed that everyone else was done for the day, there Pace would be, continuing to gather sticks and twigs for their nest, helping his sparrow siblings with their flying lessons, and gathering food and grains and seeds for their winter stores. Some days when all of the other sparrows were feeling overwhelmed with the gathering snow, there Pace could be found just calmly skipping through it, leaving his little sparrow prints for others to follow. Now, the third little sparrow, the mother called Allegra. Very creative names, all these. Let me know if you can't figure them out. The third sparrow was called Allegra. She was the happiest of the 4 sparrow chicks. Whenever one of her sparrow siblings was in a bad mood, Allegra could always find a way to cheer them up again. Now, on one very sad day, when the sparrows learned that one of the other birds from the next tree over had gone to sleep in her nest and would never be waking up again, in the midst of all of that sadness, Allegra sought to remind her family of just how lucky they were because they still had each other. Now, the fourth and final sparrow was the oldest and the wisest of them all, and his mother named him Amare. Amare would often care for his brother and sisters when his mother couldn't. He was willing to do absolutely anything for his sparrow family. And he was always the last one to get angry. One day, the other sparrows had grown tired of being hunted by the forest's owls and hawks, and they began to say cruel things about them. But Amare said to the other sparrows, "All creatures need to eat, and so let us forgive them." Now, despite all these gifts, and after some time, the sparrows began to notice something about the forest in which they lived. They noticed that it was not as young and green as it once had been. The trees were not as friendly, and the food became more scarce. The tree branches seemed to break up and rot away, leaving nothing for them to build their nests with. And the other animals in the forest noticed this too. Many of them became angry and fearful. Some were very sad, while others thought it was maybe time for them to leave. The forest won't be around forever, they said. Now, the four young sparrows then went and spoke to their mother, saying, "We must do something to save the forest." Speranza said, "I will go and try to help everyone look forward to tomorrow." And then Pace said, "I will try to help everyone stay calm and keep working." Allegra then said, "I will try to cheer everyone up with my singing." And finally, Amare said, "I will fly over the entire forest. And to all those who are hurt and angry, I will try to show compassion." And so the young sparrows went their separate ways, and they did not see their mother for quite some time. And in the days that followed, the four little sparrows worked ceaselessly. They were traveling throughout the forest to spread their gifts to all those who would listen and hear them. But there came a time when the four sparrows were too tired. They had traveled much too far on their own, and each one of them had no choice but to turn back and fly home to their mother. The forest was still growing old before their eyes. It became cold and dark, and the sparrows began to fear that it would never be the same again. And when they arrived home, they said, "Mother, what shall we do? We've traveled far and wide. We've sung our songs. We've spoken our hearts, but it does not seem to have done any good. Aren't you concerned? What will you have us do?" And the mother looked at them all and said, "My darling children, my little sparrows, I have been around for much longer than you have. I was here when the forest was young, and I will be here when the forest is old. And now the time has come to make the forest anew." And then she said, "Each one of you, your talents and your abilities, I have brought into this world, and I shall do so again. For every gift you bring is but a small portion of the gift that I shall bring." And with that, the mother flew away. Where she went off to, they could not see, and they never knew. Some animals thought that she flew into the clouds. Others said it was the sun, and others the moon. And some believed that she had flown into the night sky to become a star. But in the weeks that followed, the young sparrows noticed their forest begin to change again. The green returned to the trees, and the branches began to grow back. Flowers bloomed in its meadows, and the songs of birds returned. And though they never fully understood what had happened, the sparrows knew that it was their mother who had saved them. They hoped that in time, the other animals in the forest would be able to see this too. And even as they grew old, and as they spent many more seasons living in that vast forest, the little sparrows knew that somehow, some way, they would all see their mother again. Now, before our young kids go back to your parents, just a couple of questions for everyone. What do you think the mother sparrow may have done? How do you think she saved them all? Why do you think she chose to save them? We're shrugging. Can I tell you a secret? I myself don't know either. It's what we call a great mystery. So kids, thank you for coming forward and listening to the story. If you want to go back, you can go back. Thank you all for listening to tonight's story. Friends, the light of Christ. It is the most wondrous gift ever given. It staggers our imaginations and it confounds our reason. On the one hand, we are called by the life and example of Jesus to boldly carry this light into the world. And on the other hand, all we can really do in the presence of God is receive it, to open ourselves up to its possibility and its power. Its power is seen in moments of hope. Its power is shown in the ways of peace. Its power is felt in our joy, and its power is greatest through God's love. And so this Christmas, kids and adults, young and old, stand in the presence of that mystery. Sit in the presence of that light. And be in the realm of that love. Let it fill you. Let it change you. Let it remake you. God's creation is new every day. The presence of Christ is poured into this world every single day. And the need, as we all know, the need for God's saving love and God's redeeming grace is felt every day. There is no simpler, no more urgent, no more sacred, and no more difficult call in this life than to see that light and to be that light for everyone around you. Amen and amen. Thanks, kids, again for coming forward for tonight's bedtime story.